Julianne is a podcast host teaching you how to eliminate mental clutter and reclaim your executive energy. Her closet is full of grey, black, navy, and white, as well as recommended spring colors by the seasonal color analysis, which overpower or wash her out, while also reducing her radiance through spectral dissonance and fragmentation. Analyzing her color palette, it turns out 98% of these colors are dissonant for her specific spectral type. In this video, I'm going to analyze one specific color that she likes to wear very often during her podcast recordings and show you why this color is wrong for her spectral type, but also show you a much better color that will build trust in 30 milliseconds. This particular color that she frequently wears to record her video podcast has the right hue, meaning frequency, but it has the wrong chroma. It is too soft for her specific spectral type. And while she might be able to wear this color, it is not a standalone color, which means this color requires other colors, stronger colors, to respect her chroma and contrast type. With this color, she looks washed out. The color, but also the fabric type, introduce a lot of clutter, while her specific spectral type requires a medium-high clarity level. So the color is also unable to create a specific focus point that you need to build trust. Thus, her audience will subconsciously doubt her ability to reclaim energy if she appears to be lacking it herself. Apart from that, the chroma of the color also separates her head from her body, which is what I mean by spectral fragmentation. And this creates the floating head phenomenon. When you want to build trust, you need full body presence, meaning the colors that you're wearing need to help you exude full body presence. Thus, with this specific color, she has a visual warmth and visual competence of only 10%, which is not enough to build trust in 30 milliseconds. Especially in her specific niche. The brain interprets this as if she was trying to hide or be invisible, as if she didn't want to stand out and look radiant. She will come across as shy, timid, not confident, and not able to lead others. And if she cannot calibrate her own signal, prospects will ultimately question the reliability of her systems, leading to lower and inconsistent podcast views, but also lower conversions for her high-ticket coaching program. And she is not an exception. 95% of leaders struggle with spectral dissonance and fragmentation in their visual and vocal image. And colors represent 35% of that leak alone. When you are showing spectral dissonance and fragmentation in your wardrobe or in general in your visual image, you will ultimately start to compensate vocally for the lack of visual competence and warmth. And since Julianne has a soprano voice, she naturally carries a higher pitch and lighter acoustic weight. And because her visual competence with this specific color is around 10%, this forces her to compensate vocally for this weak spectral signal. And the brain of the observer perceives her voice as airy, soft, and youthful, rather than that of a global leader, which means vocally she is showing a higher warmth signal than a competence signal, which is very typical for women who have a soprano voice. Thus, she struggles to command the room fully because there's really no depth to anchor her presence. And soft colors and high voices are subconsciously associated with agreeableness rather than sovereignty or leadership. And Julianne struggles particularly with negotiation when clients try to push back on her fees because she doesn't look and sound like an unassailable authority, which ultimately keeps her stuck at 6 figures. And in her podcast, her soprano voice thins out very quickly under stress. Without a calibrated wardrobe blueprint to balance with visual weight, she loses the audience's trust in 30 milliseconds. What I don't recommend doing when you have a soprano voice is to lower it artificially, but rather looking into ways how you can naturally use your voice type but anchor your presence visually, which I will show you just in a second. Before I do that, I would like to show you the 4 consequences of vocal compensation for a weak visual signal. The first one is glottal compression. To counter a light visual and vocal image, Julianne tries to lower her larynx artificially to sound more like a contralto that is able to naturally command the room. This creates glottal press, a squeezed, tight sound known as the vocal fry. And there is a consequence to that. The voice loses its natural spectral resonance, meaning how far your voice is able to carry through a specific room or size. It will sound forced, exhausted, and inauthentic. And listeners will subconsciously detect some type of fraud signal, which triggers the distrust in their nervous system. The second consequence is upward vocal displacement, which means she increases the vocal volume, how loud she speaks, to cut through the perceived static. And the consequence of that is a soprano voice that pushes for volume can become thin and shrill very quickly. And instead of commanding the room, she creates acoustic noise, causing her audience to pull away, to avoid auditory overstimulation physically. The third consequence is breath support collapse. Because she is so focused on performing authority rather than inhabiting it, her breathing becomes shallow and chest-based, which also increases anxiety in high-stress situations, such as when she is recording her podcast episodes. The consequence of this is that the endings of the sentences are being swallowed due to incomplete phonation, or she gasps for air mid-sentence, which signals insecurity and high cortisol levels. And that ultimately contradicts her brand message as an expert for executive energy. The fourth consequence is vocal fatigue and loss of nuance. The physical strain of over-projecting to compensate for a weak visual signal leads to vocal fatigue. By the end of a podcast recording, her voice loses its agile and persuasive nuance. She becomes monotone to preserve her limited energy and can start to sound annoying, which neuroscientifically reduces the listener's ability to retain the information by up to 40%. This leads to auditory fatigue in her audience, and she will quickly burn out, keeping up her weekly upload schedule. By the way, to measure how much dissonance and fragmentation you are currently displaying in your visual and vocal image, you can get your authority score at the link in the description. The data so far shows that leaders are operating with around 70% of dissonance and fragmentation on average, which means you need more time to build trust with your audience. And at 70% of dissonance and fragmentation, that usually means 10 to 20 years more. To correct dissonance and fragmentation, I calculate your human spectral coherence code with the first science-based ray spectral analysis that is able to handle all 8 billion spectral types globally with the highest level of accuracy. I then use my proprietary ray spectral library of over 4,000 samples to handpick 48 custom colors for your wardrobe calibration. So I move you from visual homelessness to a calibrated, unassailable, unified field. And here's what happens when you start wearing your coherent colors relative to your spectral type and your niche. This medium chroma color drives the attention to her eyes very effectively. And your eyes are your trust-building asset number one, especially when it comes to energy. It increases the radiance of her eyes, but also her hair and her skin, because this color is in alignment with all her features, not just her eyes. And this one focus point creates calm and trust in the audience. She now has warmth of around 50% with this color and competence of 100%. Which is the right mix for her specific podcast, since it is about decluttering your mind and saving executive energy. Now she appears in control of her energy. She will sound more believable and more trustworthy whenever she's speaking about preserving your energy. This right chroma also creates full body presence without overpowering her polarity profile. Now with an anchored visual image, her voice can relax and she stops overcompensating, which again preserves her energy, but also her vocal health. She believes in her internal power because it is visible externally, which reduces her imposter syndrome, stress, and anxiety. She goes from visually drained, washed out, and stuck to unassailable unified field creating a magnetic pull toward her expertise on executive energy and mental decluttering. And on Monday, I did a poll in the YouTube community asking people which color inspires them to listen to her podcast because she looks more trustworthy in it. And these are the results. If this video was helpful, the next video will help you understand why you cannot solve color with traditional color systems, such as the seasonal color analysis.